Have you ever thought about what it actually takes to build an empire from scratch? Welcome to this explainer on the startup life cycle. Right now, the global economy is quietly exploding with new ventures, and today we're bridging the gap between economic theory and real-world execution. I want you to think about this staggering number for a second, 7. In China alone, there's a massive startup boom happening right this very second. It's being fueled by returning students, workers heading back to their hometowns, and corporate pros just flat out quitting their 9-to-5s. We're talking over 10,000 new businesses starting every single day in China. That averages out to 7 new businesses launching every single minute. I mean, it's a breathtaking number, right? It just proves the sheer unbelievable scale of global business creation happening all around us. So here's our roadmap for today. Part 1, the entrepreneur's leap. 2, traits of business leaders. 3, the business plan blueprint. 4, government support for startups. And finally, Part 5, measuring business size. Okay, let's jump straight into Part 1, the entrepreneur's leap, navigating risks and rewards. This is that critical, terrifying moment when someone decides to ditch the safety of a guaranteed paycheck to build something entirely new. You really gotta weigh the ultimate trade-off here. It's like a giant scale. On one side, you have this brilliant allure of independence. You get to choose exactly how you spend your time, bring your own crazy ideas to life, and yeah, potentially keep some incredibly high profits. But then there's the other side, the harsh reality. You're gonna need heavy capital to get off the ground. You're facing severe risks of failure, often just because you lack operational experience. And crucially, there's the opportunity cost. That's the guaranteed steady income you're completely sacrificing by not just working for someone else. Moving on to Part 2, traits of business leaders, the DNA of success. Now, looking at those intense risks we just laid out, it begs a pretty direct question. Does everyone actually have what it takes to be a successful founder? Well, let's be honest, probably not. Some people just prefer the stability of being an employee in a big firm, and that's totally fine. But to survive the brutal long hours and the completely non-existent holidays, you need a highly specific psychological profile. You've got to be incredibly hardworking and a calculated risk taker. You need to be creative just to make your product stand out in the noise. Plus, you absolutely need relentless optimism. Seriously, if you only focus on failure, you're gonna fail. You've got to be self-confident enough to pitch lenders on your wild vision, innovative, fiercely independent, and above all else, an effective communicator to actually get your business noticed. It's really a completely interconnected framework, like a giant puzzle. Those specific traits we just talked about, like supreme self-confidence and killer communication skills, those are the exact tools you need to manage the heavy disadvantages of business ownership, like the lack of experience or that terrifying financial risk. But at the exact same time, those traits unlock the ultimate rewards, high income and true independence. The entrepreneur is literally an entire ecosystem wrapped up into one person. All right, Part 3, the business plan blueprint, architecting your vision. Because let's face it, personality traits alone will not build a company. This is where we move from abstract theory to tangible architecture. This is exactly what you have to slide across a desk to a bank manager to actually secure real funding. A bank is almost certainly going to demand a rigorous, highly professional business plan before they even think about handing over a dime. Why? Because forcing an entrepreneur to sit down and think ahead carefully drastically reduces financial risk. A good plan covers your critical blind spots, things like cash flow, overhead costs, location, and the resources you'll need. It's the ultimate tool to get finance because it actually proves to the bank that you've anticipated the roadblocks ahead. So, what are the actual steps in this blueprint? First, you need a clear business description and objectives. Second, defining your market target and doing real competitor research. Third, outlining your location and production structure. And fourth, detailed financial forecasting. Let's look at a real-world example. Take 2 founders, Peter and Sabrina, who wrote up a plan for Pizza Place LT. By mapping out these exact steps, identifying a target market of young families, calculating their fixed costs at $50,000, and putting in $10,000 of their own money each, they were able to clearly forecast a $30,000 profit in year 1. That kind of rigorous step-by-step planning is exactly what justifies getting a bank loan. Let's anchor all this academic theory with a fantastic real-world case study. Take Justina Cavalli, a young entrepreneur in the Namibian cosmetics industry. She noticed that almost all the big retail shops were only stocking imported soaps. But she didn't just want to buy and resell, she wanted to manufacture locally. Her quote is just so powerful. "Eventually, I want to be able to offer employment opportunities to others and make a difference in our economy." Her ambition perfectly highlights how a rock-solid business plan aligns your own personal profit with a much broader economic impact. Which brings us to part 4, government support for startups, the macro catalyst. We've spent time looking at the individual founder, but now let's zoom out to the macroeconomic level. Why exactly does the state aggressively step in to help new businesses? Well, it's because the relationship is entirely mutually beneficial. Let's break it down systematically. Startups desperately need finance, right? So governments support them with low-interest loans and grants, especially in depressed areas. Startups need premises, so the state sets up low-cost enterprise zones. They need skilled labor and fresh ideas, so governments step up with training grants to boost worker productivity, and they open up university research facilities. In return for handing out these crucial lifelines, the government gets reduced unemployment, more choices for consumers, and a higher national output. And remember, every single massive global corporation you know today, it started as a small startup. Now for part 5, measuring business size, the yardstick of scale. Once a business successfully survives the brutal startup phase and secures funding, how do we actually go about quantifying its massive scale? Well, first we have to understand who actually cares about this sizing data. It turns out it's a huge network of stakeholders. Investors use this information to figure out where to allocate their savings safely. Governments absolutely need it to determine corporate tax brackets, separating the small businesses from the massive conglomerates. Banks use it to weigh the risk of a loan against a company's overall footprint. And of course, competitors use it constantly to benchmark their own market dominance. So how do we actually measure it? Let's do a quick comparison. Imagine Company A and Company B. Company A employs 20,000 workers, but only uses $50 million in capital, stuff like machinery and tech, to produce $100 million in output. Okay, now look at Company B. They employ only 5,000 workers, so that's a quarter of the staff, but they utilize a whopping $150 million in capital to churn out a massive $300 million in output. This perfectly illustrates the stark difference between a labor-intensive workforce and a highly automated, capital-intensive factory. And seeing that dynamic completely exposes our first measurement flaw. If you try to measure size purely by counting employees, you run into a massive wall. Think about it. A highly automated, computer-controlled factory might produce hundreds of millions of dollars in output while employing almost no one. If you only looked at their headcount, you would incorrectly classify a literal industry giant as a tiny mom-and-pop business. You run into a very similar danger when you try comparing businesses purely by their sales value. Imagine comparing a super busy market stall selling huge volumes of cheap candy against an exclusive, high-end boutique selling a handful of luxury perfumes. High sales value does not automatically mean a larger operational footprint, especially when the products are radically different in nature and price point. It can be incredibly misleading. Which brings us to the ultimate academic consensus. There is no single perfect measurement. High labor doesn't guarantee high capital, and relying purely on the value of output, that's super risky because it completely ignores goods that might just be gathering dust in a warehouse. True, rigorous business analysis requires you to blend multiple metrics simultaneously to get an accurate, ironclad picture of what's really going on. Understanding these core economic principles is your very first step on the journey, which leaves you with one direct, pretty provocative question to chew on. What kind of business are you going to build? Whether you're envisioning a local, labor-intensive service or a highly automated, capital-intensive global powerhouse, take the leap, plan rigorously, and go build something extraordinary.